So, if you've been keeping up with baseball within the past week, you would know that as of last Tuesday, the MLB trade deadline passed, in which there was a flurry of moves all across the league. Some teams trying to buy to hopefully compete and win a World Series. Some teams decided to sell and build for the future. And today, I'm going to be going over every single one of those teams, some of the most impactful trades that they ended up making at the deadline, and how they're doing almost a week out from the deadline. I'll be going in detail, about the prospects that were given out, the players that were given out, and we'll be going over what their impact has been so far on the league and what the impact could be on the teams in the future. So, as you can see here, I'm going to be ranking them from who had an incredible deadline, pretty solid deadline, a med deadline, and then below that is the good sellers, so the sellers that sold off well, got good pieces for the future. Bad deadline means you made a few deals, but it really wasn't anything impactful. And bad sellers were sellers that sold off, didn't get great pieces for what they sold off, or they could have just sold more. And then the tier for the teams that did absolutely nothing. So without further ado, we're going to get right into it. The New York Yankees. The Yankees had a bit of a weird deadline all around, but I feel like they did pretty good. Your main acquisitions during the deadline this year were Elliot Ramos and Luis Garcia. Both really good pickups. Elliot Ramos, pretty good righty bat. Definitely more of a platoon guy, but you've seen strokes of power from him in the past. So you're kind of hoping he can catch that, sustainability that he had back in 23 and 24. And Luis Garcia, who came in from the Nationals and was having a career year at the time that he was traded, and still is putting up good stats for the Yankees now. In fact, he already hit, I think, one home run at least, if not two at this point. So already putting up a pretty good impact for the Yanks, although he has struggled a little bit as of late. Among other pickups, there really wasn't much else that they did. Their main thing was calling up George Lombard, who has played pretty well so far. He's already got 2 home runs in 5 games, which is pretty crazy. All in all, it seems like the Yankees are just really hoping, that they end up getting healthy. And that some of their players can pop off a little more. But all in all, I'd rate their deadline pretty solid deadline. All things considered, they made good moves. They tried to supplement their team. And I don't believe they gave up anything too big of importance. You gave up, Jake Bird, Giovanni Cruz, among a few other guys. Not really, any crazy important prospects. So I think pretty solid is about right for the Yankees. Next up, we had the Boston Red Sox. The Boston Red Sox, I'm going to put also in a pretty solid deadline. The main 2 deals that they made were acquiring Adley Rutschman from the Baltimore Orioles in return for a boatload of prospects, to the point where it was kind of a little bit of an overpay. The Red Sox, they acquire the Orioles, they acquire Anthony Ayuson, Kyson Witherspoon, Andy Alcazar, Carlos Narvaez, and they ended up picking up Jake Rogers from the Orioles. No. They picked up some other player. But all in all, the package that the Red Sox, they traded Adley Rutschman, Jake Rogers, and a little bit of cash. And in return, the Orioles, they received Anthony Ayuson, Kyson Witherspoon, Andy Alcazar, Carlos Narvaez, and a player to be named later as well, which was quite the haul if you ask me. Kyson Witherspoon and Anthony Ayerson are 2 of the best pitching prospects in the entirety of baseball right now, which the Orioles definitely did need, and we'll get to them when we get to them. But all in all, big deal to give up for a guy who's going to be entering free agency after next year, and with the looming lockout, you might only really be paying for a rental here. So it's definitely an interesting decision on the Red Sox part. But that wasn't the only trade that they made, though. They also gave up Marcelo Meyer to the Giants in return for Eric Miller, who was a pretty solid lefty reliever. He'll be pretty good for them out of the pen. And they also acquired Eli White from the Braves for Tyler Olberstein. Not really anything crazy outside of, obviously the Adley Rutschman deal, which was trying to be, confirmed for a good part of 4 hours. So they got it through. They definitely got better at the deadline. They had the prospects to give up, but they definitely are starting to run out of, guys that they can give away. Next up is the Twins. I'm going to give them a meh deadline. Your main guys that you pick up are bullpen arms, being Jeff Hoffman, AJ Minter, and Dean Kramer. And you don't really give up anything of, value necessarily. You give up Dason Hill, John Klein, and Demary Pena, along with some international bonus pool money. As far as I'm concerned, they're not, crazy prospects. They're kind of like towards the middle of their system. So all in all, you beat up your bullpen. You got an extra starter. For not anything crazy of value, I would say that was a meh deadline. Next up on the list here, we got Tampa Bay. I'd put them in the pretty solid list. Obviously, the main guy that they acquired was Freddie Peralta from the New York Mets, which ended up being one of the bigger starting pitcher deals at the deadline here. And all in all, I think he'll be kind of one of those, under the radar type guys, considering the season that he was having with the Mets prior to being traded. The Rays, they ended up giving Aiden Smith, Gary Gil-Hill, and Emilian Petrie to the Mets in return. Emilian Petrie and Aiden Smith are pretty good players. They might end up cracking the majors at some point, but they're not, top of the line prospects or anything like that. So all in all, Rays got a good starting pitcher for a rental for half season for some guys who may or may not have cracked their, lineup in 2 years from now. So all in all, I think that's solid, but they made one more big impact trade, and that was Liam Hicks from the Marlins, who was a catcher / first baseman. He was called up last year and had a pretty okay year, but this year really broke out on the offensive side. I believe at the time that he was traded, he had 19 home runs and about 40 RBIs with like a 270 average, which for a catcher, hey, you take that for sure, especially a catcher with about 5 years of control. And they ended up giving up Braden Taylor, Adrian Santana, and Jacob Kisting, which were definitely some, good prospects, but nothing that's going to break the bank necessarily. So all in all, I'd give the Rays a pretty solid deadline. The Tigers, I'm going to put in a mid deadline. Obviously, the biggest deal of the deadline ended up being Tarek Skubal to the Dodgers. You get Zaire Hope, River Ryan, Brady Smith. Pretty good, but it feels really underwhelming for a return for Tarek Skubal. If you want to see more of my thoughts on that, you can go watch my deadline video that I made a few days before the actual deadline. But a trade that they did make on the deadline that I didn't talk about was that of trading Casey Mize to the San Diego Padres. And in return, you get Cash Mayfield and Jackson Wolf. I'm a big Cash Mayfield guy. He's been really good down in the minors so far this year. I think he'll be a good pitcher for the Tigers in the future. So all in all, good return on a rental started pitcher who probably was not going to come back. So all in all, med deadline just because you probably could have gotten more for Skubal. Royals, just Honestly, bad sellers, man. I couldn't, off the top of my head, tell you anything that they did at the deadline this year. And that kind of tells you everything that you need to know. I couldn't, name to you any guys that they moved off of, um, except picking up Nolan Hoffman from the Phillies off on the waiver wire, and trading Chris Bubich for Carlos Duran, and like one other player. Really not a good deadline for a team that was as bad as they were. They really, really, really should have sold, but they did not, and that was a bad move on their part. So they're going to go in the bad sellers tier. Next up, LA Angels. That's the Mariners. LA Angels, really good deadline, really good sellers. Um, you finally sold after like 3 to 4 years of really needing to sell. They should have sold this roster once Ohtani left. It really should have been just that simple. And you could even argue they should have sold way before that too. So that kind of shows you where this team is at. But I mean, hey, you got some great guys back. The main two pieces that you ended up moving was Joe Adell to the Guardians and Jose Soriano to the Blue Jays. And in that Jose Soriano deal, you got one of the best prospects moved at the deadline. You got Arjun Numala, who is looking like a great infield prospect. I believe he's up at AAA right now, and he's hitting pretty well. Eddie Micheletti, and Angel Riviero, just a pitcher and an outfielder to kind of fill in the spots. I believe for Toronto, Arjun Numala was their third or fourth best prospect. Down in the minors. So it's going to be a really good pickup for them. I'm sure he's going to come up and help them a lot in the future. Eddie Micheletti, I'm probably butchering that name, man. I'm not good with names. Probably a pretty solid player. I probably like a 10 or 11 prospect, and I think Angel Riviero was like their 14th. But all in all, a really good return for him. Joe Adell was the other player moved. You got one of the best catchers that was moved in terms of prospect status at the deadline in Jacob Cozart. It was kind of like a 1-for-1, but Cozart, really, really solid. And speaking of catchers that you got at the deadline, you move off Zephyrgen, and you get Moises Ballesteros and Mason McGuire. Moises Ballesteros, I'm really big on Moises. I think he's going to be really good. So I really, really, really like that pickup, especially for a reliever. Felt like a huge overpay from the Cubs, but, we'll get around to the Cubs later. But all in all, really good deadline. Moises already has a few hits. I'm pretty sure he's been up with the Major League team. So yeah, good for them. Next up, Seattle Mariners. Such a meh deadline, man. You pick up Taylor Ward, which I guess is a pretty okay pickup. It's not really, anything mind-blowing necessarily, but they needed a righty bat. And he gets it done. You gave up Alex Hope, Harrison Curling, Brock Moore. Not really necessarily any guys you're going to miss. But really, I feel like you probably could have swung a little higher with how bad the team has been on offense this year. If you wanted to compete, you probably could have went a little higher. And then you traded Luis Castillo, picked up Sir Anthony Dominguez, who I'm fairly certain has already blown a game or two for him. You pick up Nolan Jones as some minor league depth and Boston Smith. Just kind of a whatever deadline, man. For a Mariners team that was almost in the World Series last year, it's been a fairly disappointing season and a very disappointing deadline too. So they're going to go in the mid deadline tier. Baltimore, they're going to go in the good sellers tier. Trading Adley Rutschman and getting the package that you got back, which I already mentioned earlier. Really big deal. Really, really big fan of like Kyson Witherspoon, Anthony Iacin, Andy Alcazar is pretty good, and Carlos Narvaez is going to come up at some point and be a really good major league catcher. He was in the past. I still think he has that in him. And we just talked about who they got back for Taylor Ward as well. All in all, just really good deadline. You got some guys back. You helped inject the team with a lot of youth, and hopefully you can continue to keep doing that, and maybe end up making a push. Next up is the Oakland A's. They did nothing. For a team that was as bad as they were going into the deadline, they really should have moved off of a few pieces, but they really just decided not to. Shea Langoliers was supposed to be one of those guys at the deadline that a lot of people were going to be hunting for, but he ended up going on the IL prior to the deadline, and that kind of just shut down all trade talks with the A's. Just a really disappointing deadline for them. Just really didn't do too much, and I mean, they're not a good team, so what else can you really say? I guess they picked up Seth Johnson at the last minute, which good for them. He picked up a not very good middle reliever. So, yeah. Toronto, I'm going to put Toronto in the pretty solid deadline tier. All in all, you kind of flipped some pieces around to get some control, to hopefully try and compete down the road. And you didn't sell off too much. Obviously, you trade Dalton Varsho to the Houston Astros, which was kind of a necessary move. He wasn't having a good year. And, obviously you need to try and get off whatever you can get off. And you ended up getting a controllable arm in Spencer Getty, who I really like. I really like that as a swap for the Jays. Getty's been pretty good so far this year. You also pick up Jose Soriano, another really good pitcher. He'll definitely have a few years of control left, which will be very valuable for them. And those are kind of the main guys that you really picked up at the deadline here. Just kind of expanding the depth of this team, especially on the pitching side, which was something you were really struggling with prior. And yeah, they did a pretty good job, all things considered. But they did give up one of the better prospects, so I can't put them in the incredible deadline tier. Next up is the Texas Rangers. I'm pretty sure they didn't do anything at the deadline, which was a little surprising considering the AL West is a dogfight right now, and it's kind of anybody's game to win, really. So them not doing anything was slightly confusing. But not really much else I can say. They didn't really do anything of note. So they're going to go all the way down there. White Sox, they're going to go in pretty solid deadline. You finally buy for the first time since 2021, which in and of itself, considering that team lost 110 games, I think it was 114 2 years ago, you got to be really happy as a White Sox fan. You pick up Luis Castillo, really good veteran arm to, hopefully propel your team a little forward. You pick up Huascar Brazoban, who's going to be really good out of the pen for you. You pick up Brenton Doyle as well from the Rockies. And you didn't really give up much to really get some of these veteran guys on this team. So all in all, I really like the deadline for the White Sox. I think going in the pretty solid deadline tier makes sense to me. Also going in that same tier is going to be their division rival, the Cleveland Guardians. They finally bought at the deadline in a significant way, picking up Joe Adell for Jacob Cozart. Definitely really good pickup. They also picked up Nathaniel Lowe from the Cincinnati Reds, and they didn't really give up much to get him. Only really needing to give up Alejandro Riviera, which is pretty good. So all in all, pretty good deadline. You bought in. Not bad at all. Next up is going to be the Houston Astros. Houston, I'm going to give them the Met deadline. Picking up Dalton Varsho doesn't really move the needle, and giving up a controllable pitcher in Arrighetti does not seem like the best idea to me. But I do get the sentiment in wanting to compete in an AL West that is really wide open. And Dalton Varsho has showed in the past that he can have really good pop when he has it going. So I don't necessarily hate the move, but I'm not, the biggest fan of it either. I don't really think they made any other, important deals of note at the deadline other than just Dalton Varsho. So all in all, it's kind of just a whatever deadline for them. So they're going to kind of go in the Met deadline tier. Next up is the New York Mets. I'm going to put them in the good sellers tier. They sold off quite a few pieces at the deadline, mainly being Freddie Peralta, Brooks Raleigh, Huascar Brazoban, among a few other players as well. You picked up a bunch of infield prospects. Hopefully they'll come up and they'll start replacing guys. Oh, and you traded Luke Weaver too to the Pirates. Hopefully they'll come up and supplement the infield a little bit and start replacing some of the guys who need to be replaced a few years down the road. It's not necessarily a full blow up because you still have some guys on the roster that you'd like to compete with if you can. But all in all, pretty good selling deadline for the Mets. Not really much more I can say. Cincinnati, just a bad deadline, man. Really should have been sellers. Selling off only Nathaniel Lowe really was not enough for where the team is at this point in time. You should have sold off so much more than just that. It's kind of dumbfounding when you're the worst team in the NL Central. There's not really any chance you're going to climb out of that hole, and so not selling is a bit of a travesty. But they did get that Alejandro Rivera back for Nathaniel Lowe, who I guess could be, I don't know, something. It's something. You got someone back for something. I don't know. I'm trying to justify this deadline, but it's just not good. Nationals, all in all, I'd give them a Met deadline. I know, yes, they technically sold, but all in all, they didn't really sell any or get anything back for what they sold. That really blew my socks off. You got a few guys in the Luis Garcia trade, who are pretty damn good. You can definitely, work with what you got from that. And you traded Foster Griffin as well. I forgot to mention that for the Guardians. They picked up Foster Griffin. But then that's all in all the people coming in. You have Josh Hartle, Will Dion, Kendelis Vargas, Nick Mitchell. And that's from the Foster Griffin trade. And coming in from the Luis Garcia trade, you have Giovanni Cruz, Jake Bird, Jack Serbert, and Ben Grable. Jake Bird, kind of just a middle reliever. I doubt he'll get any PT in the major league level, though. Because he hasn't been good since, the Yanks traded for him last year. All in all, just stocking the farm. Not really anything wrong with that. So they're going to go in the Met tier. Going into the pretty solid deadline here, I'm going to put the Philadelphia Phillies. You pick up Luis Arias, you trade Ramon Marquez, among a few other guys, and you get Caleb Killian back. Luis Arias definitely has had his ups and his downs so far, but I'm a big fan of him as a player. I think he'll do really well here in switching up the style of play. Brooks Raley has been okay so far coming out of the pen. Not really anything crazy out of him yet, though. And all in all, you're just kind of hoping that this team can lock it down really and get stuff done, which they've been struggling to do as of late coming out of the deadline, but I think they have plenty of time to turn it around. So, yeah, I think the main deadline acquisition is just going to be guys trying to get better and guys coming up from the minors. But that seems to be the story of the Phillies every year. So they'll go in the pretty solid deadline tier. Cardinals, they're pretty good sellers this deadline. They were around 500 when they decided to sell. They notably traded Dustin May and Jojo Romero to their division rival Brewers. And they ended up getting a pretty damn solid prospect back in return. They ended up getting Alexander Frias, and Carson Ragsdale. Frias is one of the best outfielder prospects in the entirety of baseball right now, out of one of the best farm systems in the whole baseball right now. So I imagine he'll be a pretty high impact guy for the Cardinals at some point down the road. All in all, considering you barely sold, you got some good pieces back. You also traded Lars Nootbaar to the Diamondbacks. And I don't think you really got anything of note. You got Daniel Egan, Sandro Santano, and some player to be named later. Not really top of the line guys, but you can definitely live with what you got. So we're gonna put the Cardinals in the good sellers tier. Next up, Atlanta. They're gonna go in the Met deadline for a team that was competing with the Dodgers in terms of record for a majority of the season. Tyler Mahle being your big acquisition at the deadline is not the best. Not any discredit to Tyler Mahle. He's a good player. But you could have done so much more given what you have, and getting veteran relievers and veteran starters are not really going to fix that problem. I know they tried to take a swing for Jacob deGrom, but the Rangers ended up shooting that down. But that doesn't really help you succeed as a team, knowing that you could have gotten deGrom because he's not on your roster. But all in all, Braves are still a really good team in the NL, still a powerhouse, but their deadline was definitely underwhelming. Rockies, they're kind of just a whatever deadline. Not really anything crazy, but not really anything, all that interesting. Actually, I'll put them down at a bad deadline because you probably could have sold off Hunter Goodman and gotten a lot back, but I do understand why you didn't. What I don't understand is why you didn't trade Jake McCarthy or try and trade Mickey Moniak. Those two probably should have been gone, along with Tomoyuki Segundo and whoever else out of the pen you could get. You traded Victor Vodnik to the Marlins, which is cool, I guess, and you got Connor Norby, but Connor Norby is not really going to do much for you as a prospect anymore. So pretty bad deadline for the Rocks there. Next up, LA Dodgers. I'm going to put them in the incredible deadline. I don't think I really have to mention why. Tarik Skubal, honestly, at this point, he just seems like another guy in their rotation. Like, not really anything all that crazy. But it's still Tarik Skubal. And for the package they gave up alone, incredible deadline. Another incredible deadline here is going to be the Chicago Cubs. I forgot to mention this with the Blue Jays, but they ended up receiving Kevin Gausman from the Blue Jays. You get Braxton Garrett, Tyrone Taylor, Clay Holmes, just a whole bunch of starters to help beef out that rotation a little bit, make it more playoff caliber. A couple bats to come in. You get Zephyr John as well, but you trade Moises Ballesteros. I'm not a big fan of that trade in particular. But all in all, that does not mean they didn't have an incredible deadline. They're trying to go for it. They're trying to compete with the Dodgers, and I think that's the right move to make. So they're going to go in the incredible deadline tier. Another bad deadline here is the Arizona Diamondbacks. You got Lars Nootbaar, and that was it. Lars Nootbaar, for a team that is pushing for a wildcard spot, is not really going to push the needle. You could have done so much more than just Lars Nootbaar. So really disappointing deadline from the Diamondbacks, especially for a team that needed a lot of bullpen help and a lot of hitting help as well. Brewers, they also kind of had a bad deadline. Dustin May and Jojo Romero aren't bad pickups, and I'm sure in the Brewers factory they're going to be good. But you definitely wanted to take a bigger swing than what you did. I know by the time you made that trade, most of the guys were off the board, but you really should have tried to push for, just someone better. Because this is probably your best chance to compete with the Dodgers. And not really doing much is not really an option. So to me, that's a bad deadline. In reality, you could talk me into moving it up to meh. And in reality, it probably is meh. I just think for a team that should have been buying so much more, especially in a division that's as competitive as it is, they should have done more. Next up is San Diego. I'm going to put them in a pretty solid deadline. You get Casey Mize, you get Robbie Ray, two really good starters who are hopefully going to help you make a playoff push. I'm kind of blanking on who else. You picked up Austin Hayes off of the waiver wire the other day, which is pretty nice. But for the most part, you're just kind of letting your team rock, which I don't think is a bad thing necessarily. But you probably could have addressed the offense a little bit more. But all in all, not a bad deadline at all. And Casey Mize was a big get, so hopefully he does well for him. Next up, San Francisco. They were pretty good at selling at this deadline. You got one of the best pitching prospects from the Phillies for Luis Arias, and you got a pretty solid package for Eric Miller and Marcelo Meyer. And then for Robbie Ray, you get Miguel Mendez, Yoniel Hernandez, just some guys to help, beef it up in the farm a little bit. I'm sure there's a few more trades that I'm also missing. But all in all, pretty damn good deadline out of the Giants. Not really much else I can say. Next up is the Miami Marlins. They had a pretty bad deadline. You definitely should have sold a little bit more than you did. You did a 1-for-1 with Victor Vodnik and then traded Liam Hicks to the Tampa Bay Rays. You got a interesting prospect back, but not really much else. And in Victor Vodnik, you got a good pitcher, but not really much else. There were a lot of rumors of them selling off, and then they only ended up selling off one piece. So they definitely could have done a lot more with what they had. So overall, pretty disappointing deadline out of the Marlins. And then finally, the Pittsburgh Pirates. Pittsburgh, they had a good deadline. This meh is kind of like a bit of an understatement. They just beefed up their bullpen a lot, which was the right move. You pick up Luke Weaver, you pick up Camilo Duvall, and you just try and beef out your bullpen, which is definitely the right move to make because their bullpen was brutal. Just a bunch of quality bullpen guys that I think are going to pay off in dividends, hopefully for them down the end of the season. So all in all, I think a really good deadline out of them. But with that being said, this is going to be my rankings for the deadline this year. If you did enjoy, please leave a like and subscribe. I really appreciate it if you stuck out to the end. And I will see you all later.